Hi, everybody. This is Dr. Chris Dost. Welcome back to the Biblical Languages and Literature channel. Before we get into our video for today, I just want to share with you a few upcoming courses that Sabra Global Education is offering. Starting Monday, April 3rd, we have Jesus' Parables as Jewish Scripture, taught by R. Stephen Notley, Distinguished Professor of Bible at Alliance University. This course meets 1 hour per week for 4 weeks. Likewise, the Dead Sea Scrolls and the New Testament, which will be taught by Dr. Jeffrey García of Alliance University, will also meet 1 hour a week for 4 weeks, and that course begins in late April. In addition, Rabbi Dr. Robert Harris of the Jewish Theological Seminary will be teaching a 1 hour per week ongoing course in the book of Isaiah, and the course is entitled The Book of Isaiah from Yesterday to Today. And this will be an expositional study of the book of Isaiah with some rabbit trails off into medieval exegesis, both Jewish and Christian. And then finally, I'll be teaching the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, an introduction. And that course is an ongoing course which meets 1 hour per week as well. We hope to see you in class. All right, let's get started. Well, thank you everybody for joining me today on Biblical Languages and Literature, and I'm really excited to have with me my colleague and friend, Dr. Jeffrey García from Alliance University. Jeff, thanks so much for making some time to be with us here today.
Thank you for inviting me. It's good to be here.
Yeah, so, all right, so I was just thinking back, we, I think might have formally met, I want to say in like 2007, when we were both doing a Dead Sea Scrolls class with Larry Schiffman at NYU, right?
Precisely. It was
Yeah.
my I think it might have been my first semester as a
That
master.
sounds right. Yeah,
And I
because you
think
started in the master's program and ended up
yeah,
in the doctoral program
yeah.
like after a semester or something like that.
Yes. And then
Okay.
I think you were at JTS and we're taking a class at NYU.
Right, because I had just finished up the MA at JTS and I was in my
Yeah.
first semester in the doctoral program. And yeah,
Right.
so we both ended up with heavily Jewish degrees
Yes.
in New York
That's
City.
correct.
So, yep.
That's
And,
correct.
then we both ended up on the faculty at now Alliance University, right?
Yes.
So formerly Nyack College and Alliance Theological Seminary. So you were mainly, and you're still with the college level more than the seminary, right?
Yeah, so I'm with the college and recently all of the professors were put under the seminary umbrella.
Okay. All right.
So we're technically together, despite the fact that we have 4 Bible professors at the end of college. I'm now the chair of the department,
Wonderful.
and we've actually started doing a number of cross lists,
Oh, okay. Very good.
undergrad and grad. So now now the classes are sort of split level. So we have
Right.
undergrad students, we have seminary students, and so far since last semester when we started it, it's been a lot of fun actually.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
we're going to get to, talking about your scholarship and excavations and all that in a little bit, but just from a professor's standpoint,
Mhm.
what is your favorite class to teach and why?
I love my electives, my upper level electives, but most of the time I love my upper level electives because I'm teaching New Testament literature.
Okay.
And most of those students have come through that class, and that is my favorite class to teach.
Yep.
Because it provides the most challenge for students that are coming in for the first time, have grown up with a long history of Christian tradition or grown up in the church. And I spend my entire semester introducing them to the world of Jesus, the world of the first century, the world of first century Judaism, and how that applies to how they read the New Testament.
Hmm.
And the hope is that they will see that understanding the world helps to deepen their reading of the New Testament.
What is, when you think about the importance of understanding Jesus's, let's call it his broader Jewish context,
Mm-hmm. Sure.
um, when you're discussing this with someone who maybe has never been exposed to the importance of cultural and linguistic historical context, what are the passages in the New Testament that immediately come to mind as where the interpretation thereof is reshaped based on cultural context?
There's so many.
It's not fair I put you on the spot like this, right?
Yeah. The way that I generally frame the conversation at the beginning of New Testament is this: the New Testament is, without perhaps any of you ever noticing, is inviting you into a larger conversation, right? So that larger conversation assumes that you know something about that world, right? So my two examples that are sort of the examples that I use all the time are, when we get into Matthew 3 and the baptism of the baptism of Jesus through John, or via John, we have him talk to Pharisees and Sadducees. Now, okay, let's say you are a student of the Bible, you're a hardcore reader, you just ended Malachi and jumped into Matthew, and you started Matthew, you get to chapter 3, and you stop, you say, but hold on, I've read Genesis through Malachi. There's not a single Pharisee or a single Sadducee in the Old Testament, right? And
where
sometimes
do these
I ask the
people
question,
even come from? Yeah.
yeah. So I ask the question in the class sometimes, like, is there a Pharisee or Sadducee in the Old Testament? People start trying to think, and I've even had students try to come up with verses that where
Right.
they appear, and
Yeah.
it says no. In the period that we have in the Old Testament, even though some of that stuff is written early Second Temple period, we don't have a single Sadducee or Pharisee. So where are they coming from? Students will know the Pharisees because of what they hear at church, and maybe they've done some side reading. But if you're just reading the Bible itself and you get to the New Testament, you have no idea who this group is. Now, Matthew doesn't stop to say, okay, hold on, because you guys are reading in 2023 or the year 2000 or whatever, let me explain to you who these guys are so you understand why John is calling them a brood of vipers, which you could even add to that question, where's John getting this brood of viper language? But I'll leave that to the side for now. He doesn't tell you this is a group that formed during maybe the Hasmonean period, and there's a factionalism that happens in the early 1st century BCE, somewhat 2nd century BCE, something like that, and then go on and give it to you, right? He just jumps right in, assuming that you know who these individuals are and why John would be upset with them coming to this event that he is holding, right?
Right.
My second example is Jesus going to the synagogue of Nazareth in Luke 4. And for me, that is the one where, because most of my students are coming out of a church context, although the question applies also for students that don't necessarily have a church background, right? When you get to Luke and it says that Jesus goes to the synagogue on Sabbath, as was his custom, right? He gets handed this scroll of Isaiah, right? And then he reads from it, he sits down to teach, and then it keeps it moving. And it gives us no explanation as to what happens in a 1st century synagogue. So I look at the class and I say, do you guys know what happens in a 1st century synagogue? What is the service like? What does the synagogue look like? Why is any of this important? I mean, in Matthew 23, Jesus mentions the seat of Moses. Do you guys know any of this stuff? And it says no. And Luke doesn't stop to tell you, okay, because you guys don't even know what happens in a modern synagogue, let me tell you what happens in an ancient one, right? And then he doesn't go into all the steps. He assumes that the person he is writing to, which in this case is Theophilus, according to chapter 1, that this is known by the reader. So it's unnecessary to give what he would deem perhaps superfluous information. Right. In other words, he doesn't need to stop and give every detail. So that indicates to me that the New Testament is already assuming a certain amount of knowledge on its readers. Now, this doesn't mean that for people of faith, that just picking up and reading the scriptures is not impactful. It's not educational. It's not for the edification of the community. However, as you continue growing, as you continue walking, there is an expectation that you will, like when you learn how to swim, you start out in a kiddie pool, and then eventually you want to get to the deep end, right? You want to walk in deeper into deeper waters. And I think the New Testament functions like that. It functions at a very base level, but then invites you in deeper.
Right.